So on to the next question. Wow, that was something else. On to the next question. Um, so this is a question that I've asked to quite a few people that have come on Slay It, and it's very important as well. I assume that your organizations aren't the only thing you do in your whole lives. You have other commitments, other things that you need to tend to. And so that's kind of what this question is based around. How do you manage to balance your respective organizations with all the other things you do? So I think for this one, I think we can start off, since we start off with Bill for the last two, we can start off with Kannan for this one.
Who told you I balance them? I try, but I'm not sure I've succeeded, and I just keep trying. But yeah, there's the realization that the problems that we want to work on are somewhat inextricably connected to other problems that we're not working on, meaning that it's all connected, and so you should work on as much as you can. That realization kind of landed me in working on too many things, and even this thing about people losing housing, and that got me involved in something called community preservation, which the city of Boston actually does. We're lucky to be living in a progressive city and a progressive state that takes into consideration the needs of the vulnerable and actually does something about it. So I'm really grateful for that. And the Community Preservation Act in the state of Massachusetts allows for municipalities that opt in to raise some extra surcharge on real estate taxes and use the surcharge to create more affordable housing and create more open spaces for people to enjoy and to preserve the historic nature of cities like Boston. So that is a great program, and I served on that committee as a volunteer for 7 years from its inception. But that was because I realized how much of a need we're all facing. And then there's the the Conservation Commission in the city of Boston. It is about, while we do great development to provide more housing to people, we also need to be careful to preserve the nature and natural resources we have. So that is on the Conservation Commission's charter. I serve on that, and the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh that I mentioned earlier, where Bill has planted a lot of trees. We've been losing a lot of trees due to storms, and then Bill's work and Tree Eastie's work in general has been remarkable to try and bring the marsh back every time there is a storm that destroys trees. Um, so these are some of the projects, but I'm really not sure I balance them. The EC farm work is my full-time work, so that's where most of my effort goes. Um, what I try to do is to encourage people to take leadership roles and to step up and do what they can. I try to clear the way for them to do more that they want to do, that they're able to do. Sometimes I see potential in them that they can do that they themselves may not be ready for because they haven't had a chance to try. Um, I try to do that so that it can scale more as opposed to me just balancing it all. And I make a ton of mistakes and forgive myself on a regular basis, and so that I can go on. And but try to focus on what lessons I can learn from that. It's an ongoing effort to be organized and to be balanced.
That's a very, very unique answer. I like how that there was a lot of wisdom in that answer. It's like I don't balance all these things by myself. I sense potential in people, and they're the ones that assist me in doing all these things. And so I admire that as well because it's like there's only so much you can do if you balance all these activities as well. It's like what's this? Oh yeah, it's like jack of all trades, master of none. And I feel like, would you want to be a jack of all trades, master of none, or would you want to be a master of one? And I feel like that's kind of what you've been doing as well, Kandan. Like Easty Farm is a thing that you mainly do, but you also do like these so many of these other things on the side, but it's not necessarily like you're balancing all of it. It's more like you're doing you're taking care of whatever you can do rather than kind of pressurizing yourself over to kind of get it all done in one swoop. And that's very admirable. I feel like people always have this misconception that we need to do so many things and we need to balance it all and we need to take care of everything, otherwise it's gonna all become a mess. But in reality, it doesn't have to be like that. And I think you proved a very nuanced point there, Kunman.
Thank you.
So on to Bill. How do you manage to balance Tree Easty with all the other things you do?
I guess I have to echo what Kanan had said. It's very difficult to balance everything that's going on. And I don't have nearly as many things going on as Kanan does. So for me, it's more balancing the effort between Tree Easty, a couple of other organizations that I'm involved in, and then my family time, right? So I want to be able to spend as much time as I possibly can with my wife and kids and grandkids. And that's where my balancing act comes in. I will say that I tend to be probably, as it relates to Tree Easty, a little bit of a control freak where I like to kind of have my hands in a lot of decision making and what goes on. And that's a lesson that I need to take from Kanan, because he's just done an excellent job of recognizing and building leaders in his organizations and around him to be able to empower them to be able to make the decisions, carry the workload, and free up a little bit of time from from his day as well. So my organization or my workload isn't nearly as strenuous as and filled as Kanan's is, but the answer to your question is it's a tough balance to be able to be able to juggle a lot of balls. But I will also say that I love the work that I'm doing, right? So even though I might be heads down in work as it relates to safety, I mean, yeah, there's some hard parts to it and decision making and frustrations, but for the most part, I do it with a smile on my face because I know that we're doing good work and I'm working with some really really sensational people.
That's that's a great point. I feel like I've mentioned this in nearly every single Slay It video I've done, just because of how important it is in every single field that people excel in. You need to love what you're doing in order for you to make an impact. You can't do something because your dad forced you to do it or because you're doing just to get money or something. Because if you end up doing that sort of mindset, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna come off. So I feel like one of and I sense it in both of you guys. You both love doing what you do, and it's because of that that you're making such a vast impact on the community. So I think Billy made a great point there. Just as long as you love doing what you do, the balance will come naturally. What's important
Right.
is that you're invested in what you're doing and you're able to make a difference in the community because of that love for what you do.
Right. Correct.
So, yeah, on to the next question. This video probably wouldn't be complete if I hadn't asked a question about how you guys had collaborated with other organizations as well, because you guys have definitely said how you guys have collaborated with many different organizations, city departments, corporations to make a difference in not just East Boston, but the whole city of Boston in general. So that's my question for you guys. What organizations, corporations, and city departments have each of you collaborated with to bring about change in Boston? I think we can start with Bill. We can start with Bill for this one.
Sure. So, having started this organization about 5 years ago, it was sort of like a ripple effect, right? So, we started by networking with the civic organizations in East Boston. There are six different neighborhoods, so they each have the organizations where we introduced Tree Easty to the community and got enlisted their support. And from that, grew and built associations with the Mary Ellen Well Greenway and with Air Inc. and with Mothers Out Front and other like-minded, I'll call them sort of, or environmentally focused organizations within East Boston. But one of the first relationships that I made was with Conan and was with Easty Farm, and probably been our strongest collaboration partner in East Boston. started by actually planting trees in an urban wilds in East Boston called the Rose, where we collaborated with Eastie Farm to be able to plant fruit trees with the hope and promise that the harvest from those fruit trees would go back into the community through Eastie Farm. And another great example is just recently, probably within the past 6 months, there was a grant opportunity that came up within the city of Boston with Grow Boston is the name of the organization that's in the mayor's office of public housing, and they had a grant opportunity to initiate a fruit tree program in different parts of the city. And kind of reached out to me saying, "Hey, this sounds like it's something that might be of interest to you. We, have the opportunity to be able to. We're kind of in the tree game, and I think they kind of thought that it would be something that was worthwhile for us to look into." So, if he had not made that opportunity available to me, or just maybe aware of that opportunity, probably would not have been in a position to apply for that grant, which we've received, which was amazing. And now we branched out from shade trees to fruit trees, and we're ratcheting up our fruit tree focus in East Boston from a stewardship standpoint, a programming standpoint, and planting more fruit trees in East Boston with, again, the intention to distribute that fruit back into the community. And as recently as just this past week, we harvested probably about 80 pounds of cherries in the Rockies to be able to, with our volunteers and with Eastie Farms volunteers, again, to be able to help assist in food security within East Boston. So there's some great organizations. I mean, we were at one point 5 islands, East Boston was, and we feel like we're an island apart from the rest of the city of Boston, which is, part of the same land mass across the other side of the harbor. So I think that requires us to work together even stronger in collaborative methods and collaborative ways for our community.
Those are some great points you made just then. I feel like when people are just starting off an organization, they don't think too much about trying to make collaborations. Right now, they're just trying to, when they start off, they just think about like what they can do and like how they themselves can make a difference in the community. But in reality, collaborations are such a huge part of growing an organization because it never just happens with one organization. It never just happens with one person. It never just happens with one anything, basically. Collaborations are necessary in order to make a wave of difference in your community. And Bill, you said it perfectly. It's because you were able to collaborate with Kandan that you got all these amazing opportunities for Tree Eastie with the grant and the fruit tree planting as well. It was great that you were able to make such great networks. And because of that,
Yeah.
Tree Eastie is going strong in East Boston.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Yeah. Yay to Tree Eastie. I'm so glad that grant came through, Bill. And it's going to be wonderful to see a lot of fruit trees in the neighborhood. There have been a lot of fruit trees, and we used to go harvest in the urban wild apples from the apple trees that who knows who planted them, right? But when they planted them, they were thinking about the people of the future. And we don't know them, they don't know us, but they left a beautiful gift for us. And we harvest those apples, bring them to the farm, and then this guy from Ag Hall in Jamaica Plain, his name is Bill Perkins. Speaking of collaborations, he used to bring his really, really old cider machine, and that you have to hand crank, right? So we'd climb up on these trees and harvest the apples or shake the apples and others pick up from the ground and then bring them to the farm. And then the kids from the neighborhood get together and then do the hand cranking and make the cider and drink the cider and have fun that way. Another way of coming together as a community with trees that someone else planted. And hopefully that makes the point that we could do something today for the people of the future. And there's so many things that we can do. In terms of collaborations, Trees is a great organization that we're very lucky to have here. And we collaborate with Bill and other members of the organization. We also collaborate with Pierce Park Sailing Center, who have a great program with engaging community youth in learning to work the wind, and which is a renewable energy to sail. So an ancient kind of profession and occupation that people have been capable of to travel the world by working the wind, but we have not been doing that ever since we found fossil fuels. But it's so nice to have Pierce Park Sailing Center here, so we could all get on those sailboats and travel the harbor and crisscross the harbor and enjoy the views of the city from that. Maverick Landing Community Services, another great organization we collaborate with. V-Rock, Veronica Robles Cultural Center, beautiful music, dancing, and New Bay neighborhood of neighborhood Neighbors United for a Better East Boston. They were key in making sure that the resources that we made available for people in need during COVID got to the right people, and they're connected to such a network. So that was important to have that collaboration. Neighbors United for a Better East Boston, Centro Presente, Green Roots, Mutual Aid, all of those East Boston, Mary Ellen Welch Greenway, Friends of Belle Marsh. These grassroots organizations is really where it's at. It's there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience and grit and resilience in these organizations. When we come together, we really achieve a lot. And that's why the city organizations then want to support us. There's Office of Food Justice, Office of Housing that you mentioned, Bill, which is where Grow Boston is housed, and also the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, all of these great agents, city departments that we've been working with, and the Environment Department, and the Office of Green Infrastructure, which helped us restore the rain garden and the greenway. Great city agencies. And the mayor's office really good. The mayor was here at our greenhouse when we opened it. So she has been a great supporter of the kind of work that we do. And maybe because of that, the whole city has been. And state as a climate department as well, and they've been really engaged and supportive. The state's Department of Agricultural Resources has been very helpful and supportive. And I don't know about this particular federal administration, but in other administrations, we've had indications from the National Science Foundation and the USDA to support our work. And they have, in fact, support our work. So we're lucky to have people who care in communities, in municipal governments, in state governments, and in federal governments who we've been able to work with. And because of their support, I've been able to sustain and grow our work.
I feel like you could just write a whole novel with all the collaborations you listed just then. But I feel the point you just made with the grassroots thing, I was actually about to make that point. I feel like quite a few people have this idea is like most of the collaborations are always like people wearing some suit and tie and they're shaking hands with some big shot fancy pants and they're like great to collaborate with you. But in reality it's a lot more informal than that. It's like you can just meet someone on the street and you guys can just talk about how you both like manage independent organizations and you're like this sounds like we could get something pretty good going on. We should collaborate with each other and then we could expand our outreach. And it feels like that's what you, Kanan, and Bill as well. I feel like both of you have taken advantage of that. And that's what's half of half of it was the grassroots organizations that you collaborated with. And that's what allowed you to expand your influence and your impact across the East Boston community. And like Kanan said, grassroots is where it all starts. It's you uniting with other independent missions in the area that allows you guys to come together into a huge force that the city notices. And then when that's when the city starts to come into it to support everyone's missions. And so it's important that you can't just go to the city right away, but you need to look around you, see if there's other grassroots organizations in your area that you think would be worth collaborating with and building up that mission so that the city government and the state government also starts to notice. And I think that was a great point you made just then. So, on to our final question of the episode. This is a question I ask to everybody who comes on Slay just because this kind of caters to the message of Slay as a whole, which is to celebrate the excellence of the academic, artistic, and athletic excellence of people that come onto the show. And in order to celebrate that excellence, we have to share what allowed those people to become excellent in that allowed people to become excellent when they did when they appeared on Slay It. So that's what this question is about. What advice do you have for people out there looking to start an organization similar to the ones each of you manage? So that was a bit of a mouthful, but I think we can start off with I think we can start off with Kandan for this last question. So what advice would you have for some people out there?
Not everybody has to start something. There are things that are already going on that you can join. It is important to know what's happening before you kind of jump in and do something, because it's possible the problem you're trying to tackle is already being worked on by other people. And by lending a hand, you may be contributing more than by starting a whole new entity. That's the first thing to think about. That said, we do need more entrepreneurs. We do need more people who can lead or take a different approach to tackling a problem that we probably have been tackling for a while. So, my advice would be, if you want to start something, don't wait. We often say, let me finish this and then do that. Let me finish. Let's not do that. Just start now. If you want to start something, start now. But maybe make it large enough so it's a little bit challenging to you. Not too challenging, but somewhat challenging to you. And small enough so that you can get moving, as opposed to getting stuck. So start now and just decide on the size and nature and the complexity of the problem so that you can start to tackle the heart of the problem that you're trying to tackle, but in a small enough way so you can have some traction right away.
There you have it, guys. Advice from the one and only Kandan Thiruvengadam, director of Easty Farm. And okay, but for real though, that was great advice. I especially love the first piece you gave. It feels like whenever people hear about something they care about, they're like, "Let's start something, let's do it." But it feels like you just said just then, there might be other organizations that are already doing that kind of stuff. Know what I mean? So rather than trying to start your own thing and being like, and maybe trying to start your own thing and then it might turn into like a rivalry with the other organization or something of the sort, it'd be so much better for you to join their organization and contribute to the mission that they already have so much traction on. So I really love that piece of advice. And as for the one where you said to, what was it? Oh yeah, if you want to start something, start it now. It kind of goes back to the point you mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, which was, if not you, who? If now, or if not now, when? And I think that's some great interconnecting points right there, because so much of human nature, I hate to admit it, but quite a bit of human nature is procrastinating and that I'll do it later attitude. But if we can put off that I'll do it later attitude and start making a difference in the community now, then the world would already be so much of a better place. And by putting off by putting off the less important things to make way for the by putting off the less important things to tomorrow to make way for the more important things today, we can have a better world today rather than having a better world later. So those were some great pieces of advice you gave just then. So Bill, to end this wonderful episode and this wonderful informative episode of Slay It that I'm sure will get a lot of views. I hope it'll get a lot of views. But what advice do you have for people out there looking to start an organization similar to the one you manage?
Yeah, so thanks. Great question. They've all been great questions, and I applaud your effort in Slay It to be able to get the word out, and your approach, to finding folks that have something to be able to offer and sharing that information with your universe. My response is going to be sort of based on my own experience. So you're right. If an organization exists, obviously you don't want to compete or reinvent the wheel. In the case of Tree Eastie, there wasn't a similar type of organization. So the advice that I would give to somebody after they've found, a passion that they want to go after, a problem that they want to try to solve, is persistence and optimism. Those are the two pieces of, things I think they carried me through. So persistence, and the example that I gave in terms of getting the city to agree to allow us to be able to plant those trees. It took a long time. I could have very easily given up and, found something else to work on, but I just stuck with it. And I would say that is the case in anything as small as even digging a hole to plant a tree, and you come across a tree root and you say, well, geez, that's a pain in the neck. Now what the heck am I going to do? I mean, you could remove it just with a pickaxe or being able to put some muscle behind it. And I've seen this happen before. It's persistence. It's just to keep on plugging away to be able to get the job done and get the tree in the ground. And also optimism. So I've always been sort of a glass half full type of person. I don't get discouraged easily. I try to think the best things in terms of what the outcome of something is going to be. And that optimism, I think, helps people be able to, fight through, battle through issues that may come up, and in order to be able to, get done, what they want to get done, and to accomplish them. So, yeah, I would say persistence and optimism are two key elements to the keys to the success.
It's really, really funny. Right when you said persistence, my mind immediately went to when you said like you had to spend a year like get persuading the city to let you plant trees around East Boston. And like I said then, that takes a lot of dedication and perseverance. And I think that was a great piece of advice you gave to the audience just then. But for optimism, here's a bit of personal experience from my time at Eastie Farm. Anytime I've walked into the greenhouse to spend the day there, do whatever needs to be done there, I've always seen that everyone has been so upbeat. Everyone has been like, okay, guys, let's go and do this. All right, we need to take care of this. Don't worry, I'm on it. And I feel like that's the attitude that allows so much to be done in the world. No one's gonna get anything done with that, like, oh, why am I even doing this? It's not doing anything. May as well just terminate the effort. And I feel like not only Bill mentioned this point, even though Bill was the one that mentioned this point, I feel like both of you and so many other people who have started organizations across Massachusetts and even the nation have understood that persistence and optimism are two of the most important things required when you're starting an organization with the aim of making a difference in your community. So those were some great points you guys made in the whole interview. I'm so glad I was able to do this with you guys. I feel like I gained myself like 20 wisdom points from this whole thing. And I hope that people watching will also as well. But Kandan, also, I mean, I know where you are, but for the viewers' information, can you please tell the viewers where you are currently?
I'm at the Eastie Farm greenhouse, and this is at six Chelsea Terrace in East Boston. Behind us, behind that sign, is a rain barrel that collects all the water that falls on the greenhouse. And we use the rainwater to water the plants because it's actually better than the city water, because city water has chlorine and rainwater does not. And you don't want to kill the soil. The soil is a live thing with microbes. So we use the rainwater. And whatever we cannot use, we send it out. I'll see if I can turn this around. Give me a second.
No problem.
There. Okay. Yeah. So that side yard that you see there, that entire side yard outside the greenhouse is a French drain. Basically, what that means is all the water that overflows from the rain barrel goes underground and then out there, and then it goes underneath that side yard and then slowly sinks to the ground. We don't send a single drop of the water that falls on our site to the harbor, to the city's storm drains. The harbor has enough water already and it's expanding, as we know. Thank you very much. But it doesn't need any more water from us, much less the contaminants that city water tends to bring to the harbor. The more interesting features of the greenhouse, one you cannot see, is right under our feet, which is how this greenhouse is powered. It's geothermal energy. As it turns out, below a certain level, below the frost level, the Earth maintains the same temperature throughout the year. This is around the world. So we tap into that energy, bring it up here, and these compressors that I'm pointing at then increase the heat that we get from the Earth to send out nice warm energy during the winter time to keep the plants and the people comfortable. The same energy is also available in the summertime to reduce the temperature and to make it possible for the plants and people to survive here. Other features, there's a curtain here that's closed, as you can see, and there are two of these layers. One to provide insulation during the winter time, so we don't have to heat up all of the greenhouse. And the other one, the one that's closed right now, is more of a shade layer that cuts off the sunlight so that there's less sunlight that reaches in, and therefore there's less heat that's kept here during the summertime. So those are some of the features. And then out here, outside the greenhouse, this entire perimeter of the greenhouse is insulated. What you see here as that metal that protects insulation, and because of that, the ground of the greenhouse stays insulated from the rest of the ground around it, and it never freezes, which is better for the ground as well. And here's one of our climate core fellows working away.
Oh, hey, Leo.
Hi, Leo. Yeah, thank you. And out here are New England natives that are growing. And oh, Bill, do you recognize that tree?
I do. That is a very, very, very first tree that we planted in East Boston. It was a donation from a resident, and it's found its place, luckily, beside the greenhouse in Eastie Farm. So
Looks
we're
like
happy
it
for
could be
that.
our Christmas tree.
It looks awesome. It looks great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks for bringing that beautiful addition to the space.
Beautiful.
And these two are mulberry trees here, and they've been here since before we got here. In fact, we situated the greenhouse where it is just so the mulberry trees can be where they are. So this is it. If you come through a little alley called Chelsea Terrace off of Chelsea Street in East Boston, you will get to the space. You will see the greenhouse. You see the roof is open right now to let the hot air out because it is summertime. And people work in here to create the staircase to get up to the mushroom farm, which we'll have up there at the second level. And the first level, hi, Ricardo. And at the first level down here is a hydroponic farm. And those are some interesting things that are here. And if people want to visit, they're welcome to visit. We're here pretty much every day and can also come around during the weekend if people want to see. You can contact us at info@eastfarm.com. And my email is Kannan, Kannan, @eastfarm.com. If you want to come visit, learn more, volunteer, support our work, and join the joyful celebration of East Farm.
That's perfect. Yeah, I'll put a link to their website in below in the description so you guys can check that out in your own time, see the different opportunities that are at Easty Farm. And wait, Bill, does Tree Easty have a website or a social media handle that people can go and check out, like an
We
Instagram?
do. I'll provide that to you so you can add that to the notes as well. But it's simply www.treeeasty.org. And there's email addresses associated with that. It's just simply treeeasty@gmail.
All right, great. Yeah, I'll put that down in the description below so you guys can check that out on your own time. But unfortunately, the end of our time has come. It was great being able to interview you guys and talk to you guys about what EC Farm and Treat EC have done for the community. I learned a lot in this. I haven't even been keeping track of time. In like this 15 minutes or 40 to 50 minutes, I learned a lot about Easty Farm and Tree Easty that I didn't even know before we had done this video. So thank you for educating me. Thank you for educating the viewers on what you guys have done for the community. And speaking of the viewers, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and click the little like button. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, dare to dream big.
Dare to dream big. Thank you, Vedant, for what everything you do.
Yeah, dare to dream big.